Backday.
Right as she raised her glass to toast their future, I played the video. Her laugh died in her throat. My fiancé stood frozen. Everyone turned toward the screen. And there she was, my best friend, bragging about stealing him from me. Would you have done the same? Tell me, where in the world are you listening from tonight? And if you believe truth deserves its moment, subscribe for more stories like this one. Let me take you back to the night everything changed. It was unusually warm for October in Charleston. The air was thick with jasmine, and the garden lights shimmered like fireflies strung between oak trees that had stood longer than any of us had been alive. The Monroe family estate sat at the edge of the marshlands, grand and immaculate, exactly what you'd expect from Cassie. She had chosen the venue herself, curated every flower, every hors d'oeuvre, every perfectly posed photo booth corner. Of course she had. She always had a gift for making things perfect. Cassie and I had been best friends since the 8th grade. We survived braces, bad breakups. Her dad's affair, my mom's cancer diagnosis. College dorms, and those nights when we swore we'd never let a guy come between us. But people change. And promises. They vanish faster than smoke when the match burns too hot. Julian was never supposed to be hers. He was mine. At least that's what I believed until he proposed to her with a ring that looked hauntingly familiar. That night I wasn't on the guest list. But I came anyway. I came dressed in burgundy. A color she always said was too bold for me, like I was trying too hard. This time I wanted to. Julian didn't notice me right away, but Cassie did. Her smile faltered the moment our eyes met. Just a flicker. Then it returned glossy and wide, like nothing had ever broken between us. She walked over, arms open, hugging me a little too tight for two people who hadn't spoken in 5 months. "Glad you could make it," she whispered against my ear. It wasn't a welcome, it was a warning. I wouldn't miss it, I said, my voice flat. She pulled away with that practiced grin. The crowd was already half tipsy, buzzing with champagne and string quartet covers of pop songs. People from college, Julian's co-workers, her PR team always camera ready. Even her old debate coach was there. Everyone smiled. Everyone believed the story they'd been sold. But I saw the cracks. Julian stood beside her, hand resting lightly on her lower back. He wasn't looking at me, not even once. His eyes darted from the waiter's tray to the pool lights, to the bottom of his glass, anywhere but me. And that ring on Cassie's hand. It caught the garden lights just so. Same cut, same setting, same size. It couldn't be, but it was. I once joked to Cassie that if Julian ever proposed, I'd want a cushion-cut sapphire vintage style. Unique. Something no one else had. Now there it was on her finger. She twirled it proudly, letting it sparkle in the spotlight she created for herself. But it wasn't the ring that made my stomach twist. It was her laugh. Too loud, too sharp, too close to his ear. Like she was trying to convince herself she belonged there. And maybe trying to remind me that I didn't. I told myself I was just being dramatic. It was her night. Of course she'd be glowing. Of course Julian would be beside her, attentive, affectionate. They were engaged. But there was something about the way he touched her arm, not like a man in love, but like a man trying too hard to remember who he was supposed to be holding. And Cassie, she was playing a part. Her posture, her pitch-perfect laugh, the way she moved across the garden like she'd rehearsed every step. I stood by the drinks table watching her throw her head back at one of Julian's jokes. A joke I'd heard him tell me about years ago, back when we were real. Back when we were up. That ache crept up my spine again, but I swallowed it with a sip of champagne. Then I saw the way she looked at me. Not directly, not boldly. From across the garden, over the rim of her glass, with that half-smirk she used to give me in high school, the one that said, "I always win." I walked past them slowly, pretending not to look. But I saw it, the flicker in Julian's eyes. Guilt. He looked away too fast. Cassie brushed something off his shoulder, grazing his lapel, in a way that screamed intimacy. Not new love, but something more practiced. Too practiced. I paused at the dessert table, trying to catch my breath. Someone handed me a lemon tart. I didn't taste it. I looked back. They were whispering now. Julian's hand was on the small of her back. Cassie tilted her head and giggled loud enough for me to hear across the music, but not loud enough for anyone else to notice. That laugh wasn't for him. It was for me. And suddenly, I wasn't just a guest at her engagement party. I was the shadow she thought she'd erased. The ghost she never expected to walk through the door. She was wearing my smile, my memories, my future. Was I imagining it? Or was she wearing my life I couldn't sleep that night? The party kept replaying in my head, that laugh, that ring, that look. So I did what any woman does when the gut won't go quiet. I scrolled. Photos from the party had already gone up. Cassie had posted a carousel before midnight captioned, "Can't wait to marry my best friend, taken forever." The irony nearly knocked the air out of me. I closed Instagram, opened messages. I wasn't proud of what I did next, but I don't regret it either. Julian had once synced his iCloud to my laptop. Back when we were planning to move in together. We never unsynced. And there it was, his name glowing softly on the screen. A message from Cassie. Sent just 2 nights before the party. "She doesn't deserve you, not like I do." I stared at the words, read them again and again, as if more reading might change the meaning. She had sent it at 12:43 a.m. He never replied. But he didn't delete it either. I should have felt anger or betrayal, but all I felt was cold. Like the room had dropped 10 degrees, like the truth was just starting to rise through the floorboards. Cassie had always been a master of words. She knew how to twist them, smooth them, make them sound like love, even when they cut deep. What did she mean, "doesn't deserve you"? What had she told him about me? I remembered the look in Julian's eyes at the party. Guilt. Not just from doing something wrong, but from watching the person he wronged walk into the room, still smiling. I leaned back in my chair, the glow of the laptop screen washing over me, the words frozen like ice on glass. This wasn't just a flirtation. This was a theft. A betrayal 2 people had planned while I was still busy believing in both of them. And for the first time that night, I let the hurt settle. Could my best friend really want to hurt me? It happened the next afternoon. Cassie had texted asking if I could help her select some party photos. "Need your eye, you always pick the best angles," she wrote. The nerve. But I said yes. I told myself it was for closure. One last look. One last mask to wear, so I stopped by her place. She handed me her laptop and flitted off to take a call in the kitchen barefoot, humming to herself as if nothing between us had cracked. I sat at her desk scrolling through folders, pictures of the engagement party, brunches, selfies, smiling faces, laughing mouths, lies in JPEG format. Then I saw it, a folder buried inside another named simply Drafts. I clicked, paused. Inside were short video clips. 6, maybe more. I opened the most recent one. It was Cassie, no makeup, hair in a towel, sitting on her bed talking into the camera like it was her personal confessional. "Day 47, she said, smiling. "I think he's finally pulling away from her. He said she's getting too intense, classic Nora." She rolled her eyes and laughed. "I mean, she's sweet and all, but honestly, I don't know how she ever thought she could hold someone like Julian. Men like him. They want mystery, power, not Pinterest recipes and matching mugs." She looked so proud, so sure. I pressed pause. My hands were shaking, but I didn't feel them. I looked at the other files. Another clip, Cassie showing off the ring in secret. Another mocking Julian's nervous texts. Another replaying their first kiss behind my back. Each one a nail in the coffin of our friendship. She hadn't just betrayed me. She documented it, like trophies, like receipts. I closed the laptop just as she walked back in, smiling. "How's it looking?" she asked. I smiled back. Perfect. Because now I knew this wasn't an accident. This was a performance. How could someone I loved be this cruel? I didn't sleep that night. Not because I couldn't, but because I didn't want to. If I closed my eyes, I'd see her face, her laugh, that video, the way she looked into the camera, so smug, so proud of ruining me. I lay there staring at the ceiling, asking myself one impossible question. Do I stay silent, or do I set fire to everything? For hours, I weighed it like a scale I couldn't balance. What would happen if I spoke up? If I showed everyone who she really was? Would they believe me? Would they even care? She had always been the golden one, the shining girl, the one who walked into every room and made it feel like a magazine cover. I was the steady friend, the fixer, the quiet shadow that made her sparkle brighter. If I said nothing, if I walked away, I'd keep the peace. Let her have her moment. Let the lies settle into their polished little future. But could I live with that? Could I look myself in the mirror and know I let the truth rot in silence? I got up, poured a glass of water, held the rim against my lips without drinking, just listening to the night. Somewhere out there, Cassie was sleeping soundly, dreaming about wedding hashtags and honeymoon filters. And Julian. Maybe he was dreaming too. Maybe about her. Maybe about me. Maybe about neither of us. I set the glass down, walked to my desk, opened my laptop, dragged the folder of videos onto a fresh USB drive, labeled it simply Truth. I sat there for a long while, the screen light soft on my face, the cursor blinking. Blink, blink, blink. A rhythm of decision. I thought about our childhood, our pinky swears, the time she held my hand after my mom's funeral, the secrets we swore to take to the grave. And now she'd buried me before I even had the chance to fight back. No, I wouldn't go quietly. Would you burn it all down for the truth? I thought about the first time Cassie slept over at my house. We were 11. She brought her stuffed panda and a plastic tiara. We built a fort from blankets and told each other secrets under flashlight. She cried that night her mom had forgotten to pick her up from school again. I gave her my favorite pillow, told her I'd never leave her behind. That promise used to mean something. So did the way she held my hand at my mom's funeral, the way she swore we'd always protect each other no matter what men came or went. I thought about those moments as I stared at the USB drive, labeled Truth, sitting on my desk like a loaded weapon. A part of me still wanted to believe she could apologize, that maybe this wasn't her idea. Maybe Julian had tricked her, manipulated her. But those videos, that voice, that look in her eyes, Cassie didn't just steal him, she enjoyed it. She wore betrayal like a perfume, invisible to most, but intoxicating once you noticed it. And I noticed now. I picked up the USB. It felt heavier than it should. My hand didn't tremble. My heart didn't race. I wasn't scared. I was done. This wasn't about getting even. It was about getting free. She didn't just betray me. She buried the girl who once believed in her. So I buried the last piece of us too. I didn't plan the revenge overnight. It took me 3 days. 3 long, silent, calculated days. The kind of silence that's not empty, but full of the sound of things coming undone. First, I made copies of everything. All the videos, all the screenshots, the text message from Cassie. I loaded them onto a USB drive, then a second one, then a cloud backup in case the universe decided to intervene. I didn't trust chance anymore. Cassie sent out a follow-up invite for a second intimate celebration. A post-engagement wine night at a boutique event space in downtown Charleston. Guest list 40 names, close friends, family, former co-workers, even Julian's boss. I RSVP'd yes with a heart emoji. She replied, "Yay, so glad we're back, babe." The audacity. I booked a blowout, had my nails done dark crimson, bought a new clutch that fit exactly what I needed, a lipstick, a tissue, and the drive. When I walked in that night, Cassie hugged me like we hadn't seen each other in years. Julian stood nearby, stiff. He didn't speak much. I kept my smile small like a secret. I complimented her dress. She twirled. The screen behind the bar was set up for a short couple slideshow. Photos of their first date, their Paris trip, proposal pics. I offered to help the AV team test the file, told them I had a copy just in case. They nodded. The real file, mine, was already queued, set to autoplay after the final slide of theirs. I double-checked the audio, made sure her voice would come through clear when she called me too sweet to see what's coming. Then I waited. We sipped, laughed. I even took a selfie with her. She had no idea. Halfway through the evening, the lights dimmed. Cassie grabbed the mic. To my Julian, she began. To love, to loyalty, and to all of you who've been here since the beginning. I clapped. So did everyone. She gestured to me. And to Nora, she added. She's proof that real friendships survive everything. The irony almost choked me. I stood, took the mic, smiled. I do have something to say, I said. She blinked. Julian adjusted his collar. It's just a little video, I said, voice calm. Just a few moments, about what love and loyalty really look like. The AV tech nodded, clicked play. Cassie turned, stared, froze. The room went silent. And then her voice again. Men like Julian don't want someone like Nora. The crowd erupted. Mouths fell open, glasses clinked as hands dropped. Cassie lunged toward the screen. Julian stepped back. I stood there, not crying, not shaking, just still, watching the unraveling begin. Cassie shouted something blurred, high-pitched. Julian tried to grab her arm. She shook him off. The crowd began to murmur. Someone asked, Is this real? Someone else. That's her voice. That's her. Oh my God. I stepped back, placed the mic on the table. No goodbye, no apology, no explanation, just truth. As I walked toward the door, I felt a hand on my arm. Julian. Nora, he whispered. It wasn't supposed to. I pulled my arm away. You chose her, I said, twice. He had no reply. Behind me, someone clapped. Soft at first, then louder. Another voice joined, then more. It wasn't for drama. It wasn't for cruelty. It was for freedom. For anyone who's ever swallowed betrayal and smiled anyway. Cassie stood frozen. The screen behind her kept playing her voice, filling the room like perfume gone sour. She doesn't even know he kissed me first. I let her think they were still working things out, so cute. A beat passed, then chaos. Someone dropped a wine glass. Someone else muttered, Jesus Christ. Julian's mother clutched her pearls and whispered to her husband, That's Cassie speaking. That's her. Cassie turned to the AV tech screaming, Turn it off. That's private. You can't. But she was too late, too exposed, too raw. The screen flicked one final clip. Cassie twirling the ring. My ring. She looked directly into the lens. I didn't steal him. She just didn't know how to keep him. Then black. No music. No transition. Just her words echoing like a gunshot in a marble room. Cassie spun on her heels, searching for me. But I was already by the exit. Julian was pale, ashen. His tie-undone eyes blinking like he didn't know where he was anymore. She said it was just between us, he stammered. To whom I don't know, maybe to the guests, maybe to himself. Cassie lunged for him. You told me you loved me, she shouted. Julian flinched, stepped back. You told me she was over it. I almost laughed. Instead, I watched him walk past her. No goodbye, no hand outstretched, no defense, just gone, like smoke in a storm. The silence that followed wasn't empty, it was full of shifting feet, side eyes, broken assumptions. Cassie stood in the center of it all, gasping like a fish thrown from its bowl. Someone whispered, she filmed it herself. Another. Why would she keep those clips? And then, as always, the worst laughter, low, uncomfortable, but laughter all the same. That's what pride sounds like when it crumbles. One by one, the crowd thinned. A couple of Julian's friends left early, eyes low. Her old coworker hugged her briefly, then never looked back. Even her sister wouldn't meet her gaze. Cassie tried to pull herself together. She smoothed her dress, fixed a curl, but the damage had been done. No amount of style could silence what had already been heard. She looked around for me, still hoping, I guess, for a script she could rewrite. But I was standing just outside the French doors, watching through the glass. And when she spotted me, our eyes locked for the first time since it all began. There was no rage in mine, no triumph, no need to scream, I won. Only truth, only peace. She broke first, turned away, head bowed, and that was all I needed. As I stepped outside, a woman from the crowd followed me. Stranger, late 40s, maybe a friend of Julian's family. She touched my shoulder gently and said, Took courage to do what you did. I nodded, didn't say anything. Because it wasn't courage, it was clarity. Sometimes exposing the truth isn't revenge, it's release. It's been 7 months since that night. Cassie disappeared from Charleston's social life within days. She deleted her Instagram, shut down her PR firm's homepage, and issued one vague privacy request to the local paper after a gossip column ran the headline, Engagement ends in scandalous reveal, was the maid of honor the real bride? All along, the irony wrote itself. I heard from a mutual friend that she moved back in with her parents in Savannah, I think. No job, no clients, no more curated brunches or matching wine labels. Her reputation didn't just crack, it crumbled. As for Julian, he vanished. He didn't return to his old firm, his LinkedIn went dark. He didn't even collect the last of his things from the shared storage unit. Cowardice doesn't knock before it leaves. People kept asking me, do you feel better now? Was it worth it? The answer: it depends on what you mean by better. I didn't celebrate, didn't throw some I told you so dinner, didn't post any cryptic quotes about karma on my stories. I just got quiet. Because even the truth has an aftershock. Some people supported me, some stayed silent, some pulled away. They said I made a scene. They said I should have handled it in private. They said, but she was your best friend. Yes, she was, and then she wasn't. I moved apartments, painted the walls white, bought secondhand bookshelves and filled them with novels I used to love before all this turned me into a version of myself I didn't recognize. I started walking again, just around the block at first, then down the Battery past the water. Sometimes I'd sit by the railing and watch tourists pass by, smiling, taking photos, believing their memories would last forever. I took my time coming back to myself. There were no dramatic breakthroughs, no magical forgiveness arcs, just one quiet realization at a time. That healing isn't soft, it's hard, like building a new home on ground that once burned. But you can build, you can start again. Not despite the betrayal, but because of it. The truth didn't set me free. I set myself free when I stopped waiting for her to say sorry. These days, I work for myself. Small brand consulting, nothing flashy. And I like it that way. I've made new friends, ones who don't measure worth by appearances or parties. And I don't check Cassie's socials anymore. Because I don't need to know how she's doing to know how I'm doing. I'm okay, I'm still here. And I didn't need a new love or some grand finale to get my closure. I just needed the truth. And the courage to stand beside it no matter how alone it made me feel. Have you ever lost a friend to betrayal? Drop your story in the comments. And if you're still healing, you're not alone. Subscribe for more true stories of justice, clarity, and starting over. 3 months after the reveal, I got a text from Elise. She was the third friend in our trio, Cassie, Elise, and me. Back in college, we were inseparable. Until, well, you know the rest. She hadn't said anything the night of the party, hadn't reached out, hadn't picked a side. But that Tuesday morning, her message appeared. Can we grab coffee sometime? I owe you. Honesty, we met at a quiet cafe on East Bay. She looked different, not in the way people age, but in the way people carry guilt they finally decided to name. She ordered chamomile. I took black. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she said, I thought you were cruel, Nora. That night, I thought you ruined something beautiful. She stirred her tea slowly, didn't look up. But then, I watched the video again. I watched your face. I saw the way you never raised your voice, never gloated, just showed the truth. Her eyes finally met mine. And I realized I didn't want to believe Cassie could be that person. But you didn't make her that person. She already was. I didn't cry, didn't feel vindicated, just still. Elise reached across the table. I'm sorry for standing on the sidelines. You deserved better. You still do. I smiled softly. Maybe I didn't need her back in my life. But her words, they stitched something in me I didn't know was still torn. One night I was answering invoices when a message popped up. Unknown sender, subject line, thank you, even if we've never met. I opened it expecting spam, but it began. Hi Nora, you don't know me, but I know her. Cassie Monroe was my boss 3 years ago at a boutique firm in Atlanta. She fired me the week before my wedding, told me I was too emotional for leadership. What she really meant was I caught her lying to a client and refused to cover it. I kept reading. After that, I couldn't find work for months. I thought I was the problem. I even started therapy because I believed her version of who I was. Then the paragraph that stopped me last month, a friend sent me a clip from your story. I watched it shaking and crying. Not because of what she did to you, but because you proved she couldn't keep hiding. Thank you for standing up. Even if you didn't know who else was watching. Her name was Marcy. She signed off with still healing, but no longer silent. I stared at the screen for a long time. Let the words soak into places Cassie's voice had once lived rent-free. Because maybe the truth didn't just free me. Maybe it gave someone else their voice back too. I replied simply, you're not alone. Neither of us are. I didn't plan to see her again, and I certainly didn't expect to run into her at a bookstore. It was a rainy Thursday. I ducked into a small shop near King Street, looking for something to read on a quiet weekend. I was in the poetry section. The rupee core, kind, gentle, sharp, a little too honest. Then I felt the shift. That silent charge in the air when someone familiar steps into your orbit. I turned, and there she was, Cassie. No heels, no styled waves, no curated laugh. Just jeans, an oversized sweater, and hair pulled into a messy bun. For the first time in a long time, she looked small. Our eyes met. She froze. I didn't. I held her gaze. She blinked, bit her lip, stepped forward. Nora, she said, voice barely there. No venom, no defense. Just fragile, I nodded. Didn't smile, didn't sneer. Hi, I said. We stood there, two ghosts wrapped in old versions of ourselves. For a moment I wondered what she'd say. Apologize. Explain. But she didn't. She lowered her eyes and whispered, You look good. I didn't reply. Because it didn't matter what I looked like. I had peace. And that was something no mirror could ever reflect. Cassie stepped back. Her hand brushed a shelf unsteady. I'll go, she said. I gently shook my head. No need. I picked up the book I wanted, paid at the counter, and left without looking back. Because closure isn't always a conversation. Sometimes it's the choice not to need one. That was the last time I saw her. And in that moment, I didn't feel rage, or pain, or triumph. Only this: I had nothing left to prove, and nothing left to carry.